All right, let's talk about running containers on AWS. It's a big deal. So you've made the smart move, you've decided on Kubernetes. Awesome. But now you're staring down a pretty huge choice, one with some serious consequences. Are you going to go the traditional route with EKS on servers, or are you going to jump into the serverless world with Fargate? Let's dive in and figure out what this all means for you and your code.
You're basically standing at a Kubernetes crossroads. Seriously, down one path, you've got total granular control. You manage your own compute, you call the shots. Down the other, well, that's the shiny promise of a serverless world, a place where you literally never have to think about a server again. And believe me, the path you pick here, it's going to shape everything about how you build, scale, and run your apps from here on out.
Okay, so first up, let's talk about Amazon EKS. That's the Elastic Kubernetes Service. Now here's the deal. AWS handles the really complex bit, the Kubernetes control plane. That's a huge weight off your shoulders, but, and this is the key thing to remember, you are still on the hook for the worker nodes. We're talking about the actual EC2 servers that are going to run your container. And then you have AWS Fargate. Honestly, the best way to think about Fargate is like magic. It's a serverless compute engine. You just hand it your container, tell it how much CPU and memory you want, and boom, Fargate just runs it. There are no servers, you don't manage them, you don't patch them, you don't even see them. They're just gone.
So you see, this isn't just about picking a technology. It's actually a choice between two totally different philosophies. It boils down to this. What do you value more? Do you want absolute fine-grained control over everything? Or do you crave that ultimate hands-off simplicity?
So let's really unpack these two mindsets. Think of EKS on EC2 as the DIY pro approach. You're the master mechanic. You get the whole toolbox, every knob, every dial. You have the power to tune and customize everything. It's perfect for when you need that level of control. Fargate, though, that's the managed magic. You're essentially handing over the keys, and in return, you get this incredible prize, zero server management. It just works.
Okay, philosophy is great, but let's get down to the nitty-gritty. It's time to put EKS on EC2 and Fargate head-to-head and see how they stack up in the areas that actually matter when you're, trying to ship code.
First up, and this is probably the biggest one, infrastructure management. Look, with EKS on EC2, you are in the server management business, period. That means picking instance types, worrying about OS patching, security updates, capacity planning, all that stuff. With Fargate, poof, all of that operational headache just vanishes. No nodes to manage, none.
All right, let's talk about the money. How do you pay for this stuff? With EKS on EC2, it's pretty straightforward. You're paying for those servers around the clock, 24/7, doesn't matter if they're running at 100% or just sitting there idle. Fargate completely flips the script. You only pay for the precise amount of vCPU and memory your container is using, literally billed by the second, and only when it's actually running. For workloads that are spiky or don't run all the time, this can be a huge cost saving.
Okay, what about scaling? This is a big one. When your EKS cluster on EC2 gets busy and needs more power, it has to fire up a whole new virtual server. That's not instant. It can take a few minutes. Fargate doesn't have that problem because, well, it doesn't have servers to launch. It just scales your pods directly, and it happens fast, like almost instantly. If you have spiky traffic, that speed is an absolute game changer.
Now this leads us to a really important point on security. On a standard EC2 node, you might have pods from different apps all sharing the same server, the same operating system kernel. It's kind of like having roommates. Fargate gives you a much stronger security wall. Every single pod gets its own little isolated micro VM. It's like everyone gets their own private locked room. It is by default a more secure setup.
All right, that's enough theory. Let's make this real. We're going to look at the code to deploy a simple web app using both approaches. You might be surprised at just how similar it is, and also where the one tiny, crucial difference lies.
So here we've got a totally standard Kubernetes deployment file. Just plain old YAML, nothing fancy. We're just telling it, hey, I want 3 copies of this Nginx web server running. When we push this to an EKS cluster that's using EC2 nodes, Kubernetes does its thing. The scheduler looks at the servers you're managing, finds some free space, and sticks the pods right there. Pretty straightforward.
Okay, now, watch this. This is the cool part. To run that exact same deployment on Fargate, all we do is add this one little snippet right here. It's a node selector that basically says, hey, EKS, use Fargate for this. That's it. That is the only change. With just that one line, you basically told AWS, servers, that's your problem now. It's kind of amazing how powerful that is. So we've covered the what and the how. Now for the really important part, the when. When does it make sense to choose the control of EC2, and when should you just let go and embrace the sheer simplicity of Fargate? Let's break down the use cases.
You're definitely going to want to stick with EKS on EC2 when you've got really specific, demanding needs. We're talking about things like machine learning that needs beefy GPUs, or stateful apps like a database that can't just forget its data. Also, if you need to run a custom operating system or have special agents that have to run on every single server, EC2 is your guy. And for really big, predictable workloads that run 24/7, it can often be cheaper.
Fargate, on the other hand, just shines in a completely different world. It's tailor-made for microservices, for event-driven stuff, for those batch jobs that just spin up, do their work, and then vanish. It's also a fantastic choice if security is your absolute top priority, thanks to that built-in isolation. And honestly, it's for any team that just wants to stop worrying about servers and focus on shipping features.
Okay, so up until now, we've kind of been framing this as an either-or battle, EKS versus Fargate. But what if I told you that's the wrong way to think about it? What if the real pro move isn't to choose one, but to use both?
So you gotta pick a side, right? Are you on team control with EC2 or team simplicity with Fargate? You have to choose your fighter in this epic showdown.
Nope, not at all. In fact, one of the most powerful strategies, a real best practice, is to use them both, together, inside the very same EKS cluster.
Here's how that works, and it's brilliant. You set up a group of EC2 nodes for your steady, long-running stuff, things like your monitoring tools or maybe a stateful database. Then you set up a Fargate profile to automatically handle all the other stuff, your stateless web APIs, your bursty background jobs, all that. You end up with the best of both worlds. The cost savings and control of EC2 for the things that need it, and the hands-off, magical scaling of Fargate for everything else.
All right, so let's bring this all home. As we wrap up, let's just boil it all down to the key things you need to think about. It really all comes down to a handful of trade-offs.
Just take a look at this breakdown. It's pretty clear, right? If your top priorities are having full control and getting the lowest possible cost for huge, constant workloads, then EKS on EC2 is your answer. But if your main goals are to have zero infrastructure to manage, the absolute minimum operational work, and super strong security out of the box, well, Fargate wins that fight hands down.
This quote really nails it. EKS is ideal when you need performance, flexibility, and cost efficiency at scale. Fargate is ideal when you want simplicity, security, and serverless Kubernetes. It doesn't get much clearer than that.
So in the end, the ball is back in your court. It all comes down to you and your app. So take a hard look at what you're building. Think about what your team really values, and then ask yourselves this one simple question. For this specific job, right now, what do we need more? Is it control or is it simplicity? Your answer to that question, well, that's your path forward.